Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the Finance and Governance Committee to order for January the 10th, 2023. And Madam Clerk, roll call and posting of the agenda.
Chair Zaragoza,
Here.
Member Turan,
Here.
Member Basua is absent, and we have a quorum. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the City Hall Bulletin Board on January 3rd, 2022.
Thank you. Please join me to salute our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, our next item is item B. We have comments not on the agenda. And Madam Clerk, my understanding that we have about 3 individuals that like to speak virtually. And we got Nestor, Gary Welch, and Nestor Cano. Nestor.
Chair Zaragoza, we have 3 speakers signed up, but they're not available virtually or in person at this time.
So, okay, so Mr. City Attorney, we can go ahead and continue. We can get them later when they call in.
This is the point on the agenda where they are supposed to call in, so you can perhaps check after consent calendar, but then you're not required to keep it open for the entire meeting.
Okay, so Madam Clerk, no, so Nestor's not on?
Chair Zaragoza, that's correct. Nobody is on right now.
Or Gary either?
That's correct.
Or Nestor Cano?
Right.
Okay, so then we're going to continue. Our next item is item C. This is consent agenda. Item is City Clerk Department's approval of the minutes. The recommendation that the Finance and Governance Committee approve the minutes of the December 13, 2022 regular meeting as presented. Any concerns or corrections? Okay.
Well, I'll move that we accept the minutes as presented.
Okay, and I'll second it. Roll call. Please vote.
Member Turan,
Yes.
Chair Zaragoza,
Yes.
motion passes 2-0.
Thank you. Our next item is item D1. This is the Finance Department. The discussion of the State Auditor's 2021 Fiscal Health Ranking of California Cities. Recommendation of the Finance and Governance Committee recommend that the staff proceed to the City Council to present the discussion of the State Auditor's 2021 Fiscal Health Ranking of California Cities. And of course, this was under Measure M, was a pre-recorded item. And we have Betsy, or do we have Mark? Is it Mark or Betsy?
Thank you, Mayor Zaragoza. Betsy George, Chief Financial Officer. And you have us both here, Mr. Mark Sewell and myself. Mr. Sewell drafted the report, and we're here and available for questions. Primarily the report, just to summarize, I know the Measure M video is available, was to provide more context to the state auditor's ranking of Oxnard as a financially at-risk city.
Well, Betsy, let me continue before I go to Councilmember. It was an excellent report, long report, by the way, and I just want to find out if you or Mark can give us a brief understanding of the state auditor's fiscal risk report and the method and how it was compiled, because it's a long report and a little complex too, So I think even though it was on the video, I think it'd be a good understanding for myself and I'm sure probably a council member and the public. So can you give us a brief understanding of where we stand as far as the risk scores are concerned, and how my understanding that we had 482 cities that were actually looked at. So we were going against 482 cities, and what my understanding is that this was for June 30th, 2021. So can you give us some additional information on that?
Sure, thank you. Yes, it is an evaluation of all the cities in California at a specific point in time. And the study that was released in the summer of 2022 is on the financial health of cities as of June 30th, 2021. So the data is coming a year in arrears, so it is older data, but it's at that point in time, and really just evaluating several criteria of each of the cities. And being number one on this list is not good because they're ranked in the order of riskiest.
Oh, okay.
And we had in prior years hovered around I think the 40th, in the 40th range, and we hopped up to number 8 for that fiscal year ending in 2021. And it looks at certain criteria such as the general fund reserves of the city, what the debt burden is, liquidity, which is cash on hand, very similar and closely tied to general fund reserves. Also the pension obligation and revenue trends. So the city ranks those, looks at all the cities, takes the data from each city's financial statements, and then ranks the cities based on criteria that they've developed.
So the Measure E didn't really help us at this time because it was not taken into consideration, is that correct?
That's correct in that Measure E, while it was approved by the voters in November of 2020, we didn't start collections until April of 2021. And since this ranking was through June 2021, it only had 3 months of Measure E, so we didn't have the benefit of a full year of the Measure E revenue, so that certainly impacted us. And then also we had the IUF litigation.
I was going to ask about that, yes.
Yeah, and so we're repaying the utility funds, $36 million over 4 years' time. And so the way that we were required to record that in 2021 was the entire $36 million was taken out of our general fund reserves, even though we still have the cash. We're going to be paying it over the year. So that is one of the impacts in that particular year.
So I can recall, we're in the third year now of the IUF, or going into the third year?
This is the third year.
The third year.
No, this is the second of 4 years. So we made a payment in June of 2021. We made quarterly payments through 22. We're making quarterly payments in this fiscal year 23, and we'll be making our final round of payments in fiscal 24.
So once we get past the IUF, then that's really going to help us tremendously.
Yes, exactly. That's about $10 million a year that we will not be having as an expenditure in the general fund.
And according to your report too, the CalPERS is not part of the computation. Is that correct?
It's not in the
CalPERS liability.
Yeah, it is. There's an OPEB evaluation, and so and a pension evaluation. So that is considered in the final item in the report, the pension obligations and other post-employment benefits. So that is considered, but in that ranking, we are in a much healthier state than the general fund reserves.
Yeah, and also one of the things that's going to help us too is eventually, or has helped us a little bit now, is the S&P rating, which I think is Standard & Poor's ratings, which is kind of, not now as much as it potentially in the future.
I think what that is it's not necessarily going to impact these numbers specifically, but what that is telling us, because the S&P rating that we just received, we received an upgrade back in October when Standard & Poor's, yes, they upgraded us from A to A+, and they're looking at current information and future. They're looking at what is the potential in the future that we can be repaying our debt is what they're most interested in. So the fact that a few months ago they upgraded our rating is a telltale sign that this historical kind of retroactive report is at a point in time when maybe the city didn't look as healthy, but if we were to reevaluate this now, we're looking forward to the state auditor's report on fiscal 2022, which will come out in summer of 23, that our ranking will have improved significantly.
Yeah, so consequently, even though we're rated at that number, we're still, our finances are still strong and improving.
Yes.
I think the public needs to know that, which I think is important.
Yeah, the S&P is definitely a signal of where we are now and where we're headed. And good information to take into account when you do review this historical information, and not taking this report, which I think Mark did a good job of outlining it
Mark.
in the report, was that this is one data point at one point in time. It does have good information about the city, but it shouldn't be looked at alone.
And I know it was a long presentation and also very complex, but I hope that maybe the public had the opportunity to read it. So we just want to give our constituency and our city council the opportunity to kind of fundamentally understand it. Councilmember.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Ms. George, for answering the line of questions. They were actually along the lines of what I was hoping to go over as well, so appreciate the conversation. A question that I have is just to clarify for the public. You just mentioned it, but I think it needs to really stand that this particular report is based in 2021 for the end of that fiscal year, right? The 2021 fiscal year, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And I hope that folks can appreciate and really give credit where credit's due for our finance department and all of the staff who worked on getting our city to the point where even from 2020 to 21 to now us being in the 22-23 fiscal year, the difference where we are as a city and the improved health outlook that we have from a fiscal point of view is just amazing to look at where we were even just 2 fiscal years ago and where we are now. And so I just hope that the general public can understand that. And, the way I kind of look at it is at that point in time, as you mentioned, that point in time, June of 2021, the city had these things going on. And I kind of look at it like if I were applying for health insurance and I had to do a health survey or a health exam, right? Well, if I was sick with the flu when they did that health exam and they used that point in time to say, oh, you're really unhealthy. You have high temperature, you're sweating, chills, you have a lot of stuff going on right now at this moment. We're going to judge everything based on that. That's not obviously a way to look at that, right? And so with our city's fiscal health, at that point in time, that's where we were. And if we were to look at it at this point in time, would you say that it would be different from what we saw in June 21?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we've paid down just about half of the IUF funds, and then also with Measure E, which really I'd love to take credit with the finance department, but that really goes to city council and the city manager's office to get that measure on the ballot and have the community support to have those additional revenues where we're able to provide build back services and restore services for the city, as well as increase our reserves and our overall fiscal health.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for mentioning Measure E as well. We absolutely should give thanks again. I know we've done it a number of times from the dais and from staff. Thanks to the voters for entrusting their local government to take that and reinvest it back into the community, because people can ask, well, what is Measure E doing? What am I getting? They can see the signs out on the streets when landscaping's happening. They can see the vehicles that are purchased to serve the community. They can see road work happening, but it also serves an intangible of improving the health, the fiscal health of their city. Our Standard & Poor's rating has gone up. The next time this auditor's report comes out, that will be factored in and will show an improved level of fiscal health and less risk and liability. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and I appreciate all the work that went into this. So I don't think I had any questions. I think I had just statements. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. One of the things that Betsy, that we should reiterate again is the IUF is our utilities. We're really paying from the general fund to the utilities. So it's really an in-house transfer, which we're not paying it to some outside agencies. We come to water, wastewater, and water. So I think people should understand that those monies are just being transferred back to the IUF, which is our utilities.
Right, it's a reimbursement back to those utility funds. They had transferred the money to the general fund at one point in time in the past, and then now we are repaying back the utility funds for that. So yes, it's an in-house within the city funds, but it needs to go to those rate-driven funds.
Right, and I think I just want to share that because we're paying within the city and not outside the city, which is really important. So Councilmember?
Thank you. And I think one last item that is worth mentioning, the pension obligation that the city has and all municipalities and counties throughout the state of California have. I think it's important to note that this city is not just kind of resting on its laurels waiting to see what happens. We are actually taking action to see what our options are and what the best option is going to be to be able to meet those obligations in the future and also do right by the community and the taxpayers. And so I imagine that would be factored in the future as well. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, yes.
Okay. And I do appreciate, and I did see it wasn't part of the presentation that I can recall off the top of my head, but I do recall seeing a projected obligations as the decade goes on for our unfunded liability for our pensions. And so we do see that projection going up as predicted, but then leveling off based on a number of factors or scenarios. But I hope the public knows that the city council, our city staff are working to address that. And it's not something that we're just crossing our fingers and hoping it gets figured out somehow. We are working towards that. So, thank you.
And that's a pretty important direction, because we're a full-service city compared to a contract city. In a comparable city, we're not unique in any way, because almost every big city owes money to, for the unfunded liability. Someone thank you. So what's the pleasure of this item?
I think this is an action item to send to council, correct?
Action item,
Yes, so I'll make that recommendation, or I'll move that
that we
recommendation.
proceed and submit it to the, so we need a vote on that.
Oh,
Are there any public
Well,
comments?
No public
first of all?
comments? Any additional comments on this item?
Chair Zaragoza, there's no speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Thank you. So, I'll second your motion. Okay. Roll call?
Member Tehran,
yes.
Chair Zaragoza,
Yes.
motion passes 2-0.
And Betsy and Mark, thank you. Excellent presentation, by the way. Thank you. Our next item is item 2. This is City Treasurer. Subject is General Banking Services Agreement. Recommendation to the Finance and Governance Committee recommend that the City Council receive and file the agreement with Bank of America, an estimated $500,000 for the initial term of 3 years with the option to renew for an additional 5 years. And again, this was a pre-recorded item under Measure M, and we have our City Treasurer for any additional, any comments on this item? Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Molina, for the presentation. I just have a handful of questions just so that we can get a little bit more context to this item here. I'll ask them just one at a time. First is, can you give us just a little bit of background on this item? Just what it is that we're looking that's before us, just for the benefit of the public.
Yes. The government code establishes authority within the elected city treasurer to identify the bank that the city will do or general banking services. That includes wire transfers, checks, PayPal, a number of different financial transactions that the city conducts. And to that end, I had the advantage of having the mayor prioritize this to staff, and staff helped me greatly in getting this through. We complied with the government code sections 53.630 through 53.648. We also complied with the city's purchasing policy, but over and above that, we also complied with the government finance officer's recommended practices for establishing who your bank should be. And so to that end, there was an RFP that was put together by Jennifer Yates, a purchasing manager. I think it was like 80-some pages in length to get all the information we wanted from the different banks to make sure that they were able to provide us the services that we need. The actual list of services is included in the agenda packet that you have, and it goes, I think, over 16 pages with maybe 20 individual specific transaction type in each page. So that indicates to you the kinds of transactions that we're looking at when we're approving this particular service agreement.
All right, thank you. And you had mentioned the government code. Is there a specific government code that applies to this or allows for this as a municipality?
Yes, for general law cities, the government codes that are inclusive of the requirements are Government Code Section 53630 through 53648. And in that, it identifies the process and the authority that they place on the city treasurer to go through the process.
All right, and you already mentioned that all those codes are followed, so thank you on that. Last two questions regarding the RFP. Who was notified through the RFP through that process?
That's an excellent question. We notified 6, 7, 8 different banks, and it was also put on the new online system for obtaining bids on different services that the city is looking for. And it was somewhat dismaying to all of us that at this point we only got responses from 2 banks. The banks were Bank of the West and Bank of America. Now, they're both very good banks, top quality. They filled out the forms completely. They identified that they were doing proper banking procedures by state law. And so we feel that even though we only got 2, we were able to identify a bank that did provide us good services. In addition, although that wasn't part of our criteria, by remaining with Bank of America, we preclude the added cost of new staff training, transferring data and information back and forth. I will say this, although I think the purchasing manager would not be happy with me, but I indicated to her I would. I will be contacting all these other banks and getting a specific reason as to why didn't they apply, because it includes Chase and other major banks that are in our area. So I don't fully understand why, but if there was something that we need to consider in how we put the RFP together, the request for proposal, then I want to know that so that we make sure that we're not unintentionally excluding anyone.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm not a purchasing professional, but I feel like through other departments, through Public Works and Recreation, and even maybe our city attorneys and city manager's office, when we do requests for proposal, we know that there are many qualified entities out there who could do the work, but why do we get so few responses sometimes? So as long as that's allowable, I appreciate you taking that extra step. My last question is, which bank was chosen and what did they offer?
Bank of America was chosen. I think they were within the reasonable pricing range of each other. But I was able to negotiate an earned interest credit with Bank of America. And because I did that 3 years ago, even though we have an overall charge of between $360,000 and $500,000 million, we've been able to cover most of those charges by the earned income credit. That's the good part. The bad part is to get that earned interest credit, most recently at 2%, we have to maintain a certain cash balance in the bank account. And you can imagine that it's a very large amount. I would prefer bringing our average daily cash balance down to $3 million, but because of the requirement, we keep it at about, well, for December, it was 25 million. So that gives you an idea of what we have in there. And so they take that 25 million and on a daily basis, but I'll do it. And they multiply that times 2%. And then they compare that against our monthly charges. And if it's bigger than our monthly charges, then our monthly charges are netted out. Obviously, if it's the other way around, we're going to have to pay the difference. And when interest rates were in the 4 or 5%, as they have been in the last couple of months, we need to look carefully at that, because if we could invest that money at a rate of 5% and instead we're only getting 2%, then it might be better for us to pay the bank some monthly charges and invest it at the higher interest rate. But for the last 4 or 5 years, that has not been the case, and so we've allowed the money to remain at the bank, getting approximately 2% when we were otherwise getting 1.8, 1.5% on average.
Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you, Mr. Molina.
So,
Much
Mr.
appreciated.
Treasurer, I understand that this is a 3-year contract. This is about $360,000 per year.
Yeah, between that and 500,000.
500,000.
Yeah.
And also it's a 3-year with options of renewal for 5 one-year periods.
That's correct. We hope not to need that,
Potentially.
because Jennifer and I are working together, and we agree that that in 2.5 years, we want to get this process started so that by the end of the 3rd year, we will already have identified our future 3-year contract with the same or a new bank. We don't want to get into a delay as we have been for the last couple of years.
And going back to the RFP, in your report, you said that was Bank of America was the best qualified RFP candidate. And we've been doing business with Bank of America for quite a few years, right?
Yes, we have. Well, it's been, I think Dale Belcher started working with.
Belcher, that far back?
Yeah, remember?
My goodness.
I think she was working with Bank of America, as I recall. So, yeah, it's been quite some time.
Couple of decades.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Madam Clerk, any speakers on this item, either virtually or in the audience?
Chair Zaragoza, we have no speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Mr. City Attorney, any additional comments? We okay?
Just to clarify that the government code provisions regarding deposit of funds, that article of the government code is a bit broader. It goes from sections 53630 to 53686.
Thank you for that. All righty, so I'd like to make a motion to approve this item.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Chair Zaragoza,
Yes.
Member Turan,
Yes.
motion passes 2-0.
Thank you very
Councilmember,
much.
any items for the future agendas? Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Nope, not for mine either, so we are adjourned. Thank you. And we'll be back at 4 or 5 for the second item. Thank you.